So you probably won't be surprised to hear that I'm not a big Tottenham Hotspur fan, given that I like Arsenal, but somehow LAFC managed to get one of the most likable Tottenham Hotspur players of all time in Gareth Bale. And we know about that saga and that lore and kind of how that didn't look like it worked out. And then all of a sudden, in MLS Cup, it did work out. And then now you have the absolute most likable Tottenham Hotspur player that ever existed in Sung Hyung Min. So I'm just wondering, as kind of just part of the evidence, because again, Spurs players and fans are not necessarily what I would consider lucky, and yet is LAFC the luckiest group of fans in the league, given that you have all these fun, likable players that do well. Not to mention Bouanga and everybody else. I'm just wondering. I'm just sitting over here as somebody covering Austin. What do
I
you
I
think?
think there's a good argument to be made. I think it's a great argument because LAFC they're lucky to be playing in LA. They have that draw, and they're lucky to have
Mhm.
the ownership as well that they do, who are willing to spend, right? We have teams in big markets elsewhere as well, but they don't seem to spend quite as much as LAFC likes to. And yeah, those draws, I mean, you get lucky. It all seems to come together, right? There's a huge Korean population in LA.
Mhm.
Koreatown is very, very close to BMO Stadium as well.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it all seems to just coincide and coalesce really, really well for LAFC whenever they want to bring in one of these big players. If it's a Giorgio Chiellini, they come in and decide, well, I don't even need a DP. I'll take a TAM just to be in LA and be with LAFC. These are the positives that other teams don't really get to benefit from playing elsewhere outside of LA. So I think it's, yeah, really lucky that LAFC gets to have not only playing in LA, but have the ownership they do and have a general manager in John Thorrington who knows the MLS rules as well as anybody and can dodge and dive throughout them.
Okay. Well, I will say that Austin FC has a pretty high number of huggable players, including Ilya Sanchez, who came over from LAFC. So I'm just wondering who is more huggable, Chiellini or Son? And have you actually gotten to hug a player? I have not, but it seems like a breach of decorum. But
Yeah, I try not to hug the players, but no, it's such a good comparison, I think, because they're both superstars who don't act like it. They're
Mhm.
both the most humble superstars that you're going to see. They're the type of people that go and shake everybody's hand, that introduce themselves. They're the type of people who they're not skipping press conferences. Every time Son scores a goal, he's going to be in the press conference. You don't see that from a Carlos Vela or many other of the past superstars, even throughout the league still today. And so I think there is a similarity between the two where I don't know whether it's the European idea of it. I kind of doubt it, but whatever it is, those two are, yeah, two of the most incredible human beings, much less football players that I think I've ever met.
Is there a least huggable LAFC player?
Least huggable. Oof. I would say somebody who I wouldn't want to go in a one-on-one duel with, somebody like Sergi Palencia, somebody like that who he's
Okay.
a great guy off the field, but I
Sure.
don't think you want to meet him one-on-one on the field.
Yeah. He doesn't seem like a hugger. So maybe he is the LAFC equivalent of Alexander Svatak.
There you go, something like that. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Hey, look, LEA is a very huggable guy, but maybe not to LAFC fans after game one. So
I will say I'm just going to share a little anecdote here. So the first time I met Ilya, well, no, actually, I'm going to take that back because I did meet him at the All-Star game in 22. The first time I met him when he was with Austin FC, it was a open practice that they had where it was something like 19 degrees at the stadium. It was like really ridiculously cold, which like never happens in Austin almost. We get these occasional extreme cold snaps and those just happen to coincide with this open practice. So it comes out like in shorts and flip-flops. We're outside, we're doing this interview, and this TV guy jumps my question, and Ilya just looks over at me and he reaches out and he grabs my arm and holds on to it until he's finished answering the other person's question, and then he turns to me and let me
Mhm.
go. So yeah, so I guess that's like a hug.
I no, I actually have a very similar anecdote that I could share as
Do
well
you
because
really?
it just, yeah, it shows the type of person that Ilie Sanchez is. he is not a player who thinks that he's above the media or thinks that, we're not going to give information to the media or whatever these type of a lot of players and coaches do. They're hesitant to share. But no, Ilie, I remember it was in El Trafico, I believe it was at the Rose Bowl, and Galaxy won the game. It was a frustrating game for LAFC. And afterwards, I asked him something to the effect of like, what didn't go right? How did you not stop Ricky Puig tonight? What do you think you could have done a little bit better on him?
Mhm.
Something like that. And Ilie naturally was upset that he had lost the game and just said something like, yeah, Puig is a very good player and he's hard to stop and didn't give me as much as Ilie normally would. And fine with me. Emotions are emotions, and that's what, you know, being a reporter is. But the next week, he comes back in the next press conference, and I ask him a completely unrelated question about the next game, whatever. And before he answers my question, he says, "Hold on, Justin, I just want to apologize to you about last time and the answer that I gave and the emotions that I showed." And he even went back and answered the Ricky Bouge question again. And I just thought, wow, I've never seen a player do that.
So
It blew me
that's
away.
so that's like a verbal hug.
Emergency podcast. They did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hell yeah, shut up, hell yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. As you are listening to this, it is sometime Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, depending on when I have edited this. And tomorrow, Austin is up against it. They are 90 minutes from elimination. They are facing LAFC, who they lost to frustratingly in a game one on Wednesday night. And with us to help break this down is somebody who knows more about LAFC than pretty much anybody I know, other than people who are, of course, directly involved as players or front office people. It is Justin Ruderman. He writes for MLS, writes for Upper 90, and he used to write for the Striker back in the Striker days. Justin, I am so glad to have you on here. How are you doing?
Doing well, Phil. Thank you so much for having me on. Excited to talk about this. It's a really fun series. These
Mhm.
two teams seem to have history, and we keep building some more.
Yeah, when Austin beat LAFC a few weeks ago during the international break, I kind of figured, okay, Austin has won this game, and as a reward, they're going to get LAFC in the playoffs. And lo and behold, that's how it worked out. We had done the 81 different permutations of how the top four would work out, and in a majority, well, not a majority of the cases, but in a plurality of the cases, it looked like it was going to be LAFC, and indeed, that is what happened in a very, very weird decision day, which included some results that we did not quite expect. This is not quite the way I thought we were going to get to the 3-6 matchup that we have, but lo and behold, here we are. So, game one. First of all, I don't know if you feel as ripped off as I do from the MLS scheduling, that this was the last of the game ones for the first round series, that this was the latest start time for those of us here in Austin. It was weird. And now they have, what, 4 days of rest, and then they're back at it when some other teams are having a week rest. It doesn't seem right. And oh, also, the other thing is that this got to conflict with game five of the World Series, which they probably could have avoided. I guess there was some concert over the weekend. There was like 21 Pilots or something like that, something weird at BMO Stadium that maybe prevented it from
Yeah,
being there.
they always have concerts, and then they have to patch together the pitch,
Right.
and it never looks great. It's never the best situation, but that's what happens when LAFC owns the stadium and they want to make more money and, profit as much as they can off of it. So they always have, yeah, too many concerts in my opinion. But the scheduling too was weird to me. I mean, there were no games on that first Saturday. They had Miami on the Friday and then they skipped
Yeah.
to the Sunday. It's like, why are you not playing games on Saturday?
Yeah.
I
I had
don't
a
know,
theory.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
My theory was Don Garber had a wedding to attend that day and needed to keep his schedule clear. So they just went ahead and decided, up, we're not going to have any games this day because they have five. They have five today, like starting in about an hour from now. We got some interesting ones today, and then of course tomorrow we are at it again with an unusually late evening start time, which is fine. Going to be a little weird getting into Monday morning, but that is something that has happened. Austin does really well on Sunday nights, so that is something. Oh, have you, before we get into the game, we were talking about concerts. Have you been to a concert at BMO Stadium? I'm just kind of wondering how it is as a venue.
I haven't actually, but I've heard it's very good. They put they just basically put like the stage where the 32-52 is, and then the
Okay.
rest of the stadium they can do, and then yeah, sometimes they'll put seats on the field or whatever, and that's often what messes
Yeah.
up the pitch.
Yeah, it's the same
Yeah.
architect that did LAFC in Austin. It's the same thing when they do concerts.
Hmm.
They were fixing to do a lot of concerts, or at least that was the plans when they first started. And they haven't really had that many. So I think they had like a gorilla show or something, and then they had like a Willie Fourth of July picnic, but they haven't used it as a venue as much as I thought they were going to. So who knows? Anyway, let's get into the soccer. So game one, I'm just curious as to what some takeaways were from the LAFC perspective. Because again, it was a game where LAFC maybe wasn't as dominant as you might have expected, but still, of course, got the job done. They got the goal fairly late. Kind of an unusual goal in that it looked like Bouanga's shot was going to go in. It did not, but there's Nathan Ordaz to clean up on the back end. And we've seen that connection before. I think it was at Coachella when we ran into each other where we saw Bouanga set up this kind of alley-oop shot that Ordaz finished.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah.
where that poor
No,
fire
it's
goalie was being posterized. So they've done this before. They have a history. And yeah, Nathan Ordaz kind of an unsung hero. I know that somebody who has been kind of keyed on as a number 9 for LAFC, but still at the same time not necessarily with, especially with Sungun's arrival, somebody that you would expect to step up in those big moments. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I think just general takeaways. I mean, first of all, the physicality for from moment one, I think was the biggest takeaway, I guess, for me is just Austin imposed themselves immediately. I'm sure that was part of the game plan from Nico
Hmm.
Estevez
Hmm.
because I mean, obviously Ilie stepped into Sun and all of that, but it was more than that. I mean, there were maybe one shot on target or two in that first half, and there were probably 15 or 20 fouls. And so it just seemed a little bit disjointed in that sense. And I think as well that the early goal doesn't help Austin, in my opinion, because
Hmm.
if LAFC have an early goal, then they don't have to push forward, they don't have to push numbers forward as much, and they're able to sit back and counter, and that's just what LAFC love to do. If they're able to do that with a goal
Yep.
lead, then that is ideal for LAFC's style of play. And so I think that yeah, in game two, that's something that Austin certainly would want to avoid, but as you say, you asked me the X factors before the game. I said Ryan Hollingshead, he led to the
Yep.
first goal, and then I said
Yep.
David Martinez and Nathan Ordaz, and those two are such an interesting duo to me because David Martinez is the one with all the pure talent, the natural born talent. He is so skilled on the ball. He's so fast. He can do all of these things, but he doesn't do enough work off the pitch. On the training pitch, he's still maturing into an adult. He's still a teenager, right? And
Hmm.
Nathan Ordaz this offseason has turned himself from that teenager into an adult. He's bulked up in the weight room. He's really focused on tactically. He's really worked really, really hard to gain the trust of Steve Cherundolo, which I don't think Martinez quite has. And so that's why he's had such a good season, right? There was Olivier Giroud here at the beginning of the season, and Nathan
Right.
Ordaz took that number 9 spot over him because he
Yep.
was playing that well. Unfortunately, Nathan Ordaz had a little bit of injuries there towards the middle back end of the season and then he went off with the national team and now he's back. So it's interesting because David Martinez ends up finishing fifth, I think, on the 22 under 22. Nathan Ordaz is behind him. But me, as somebody who watched LAFC the entire year, I actually voted Nathan Ordaz higher than I did
Mm.
David Martinez on that because he's been that good this year. So while I asked him and he agreed that it was the biggest goal of his career, it's not super shocking to me that he would come up in a big moment like that. But it was funny the way that it happened. For sure, he threw his hands on his head, immediately thought he was offside, and he had a few good quotes. He said, "I just didn't want to be the who ruined the game, and then everybody's mad at me after the game." He was like, "Yeah, either I touch it and I'm offside, or it was going in, and all those different scenarios." But lucky for him, he was onside, and it all counted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in turn, it means that Austin becomes the first team in that game to not let either Son or Bouanga get on the score sheet goal or assist
Hmm.
since the two
Right.
have been
Right. Yeah.
playing together. Sure, it was kind of a Denny Bouanga assist, but technically not. And so,
Yeah. I would consider it Bouanga assist, really.
yeah, I know. I agree with you, but technically not. So the
Right.
point being that they did a pretty good job on those two
Hmm.
comparatively to what other teams I think
Yeah.
have been doing thus far.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So yeah, and again with the Ordaz goal, I mean there was more than one Austin fan, and I did field a text from somebody who definitely did think it was offside. So, but it obviously it stood, and it stood as the match winner. So nothing we can really do about that after the fact. But yeah, I'd done an article on Friday where I took one number from each of the 8 playoff series so far from game one, and I actually kind of cheated with the LAFC Austin game. I had two numbers, so I had 2 and 7. Any guesses? Speaking of Sun and Bouanga, to what those refer to?
2 goals.
Well, 2 and 7
Not
though.
sure.
Two for Sun, 7 for Bouanga. Number of shots they had.
Oh, shots. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so
There you go.
Sun
Okay.
was largely bottled up by Austin, and it was interesting. Nico Estevez was saying on Friday in his press availability that he thought that Austin were actually the aggressors in that game when he was asked about whether they're going to be the aggressors in game two. And I thought that was a pretty interesting observation. I don't know that that necessarily bore out. I mean, obviously Austin got the bulk of the possession, but they were pretty spectacularly outshot. But they did contain Sun, but Bawanga continues to be a player that plagues Austin. And even though none of those shots went in, that definitely pressured the back line. And you saw with Austin, and this is kind of inevitably a thing that Austin will do, is that they will largely dominate a game defensively. They will play really well, and then they'll have a couple of defensive lapses, and that will do them in. And you definitely saw that on the first goal, right? So you saw Hollingshead got that ball in, bounced off Heinz Eich's foot. Immediately he does the annoying, like, Premier League mid-table to bottom of the table thing where he puts his hand up to try to indicate that it was offside. No, no, he was not offside. You were just adult and you like let that in off your foot. That's bad on you, Brendan Heinzike, which is weird because usually he has been a pretty solid defender all year. But again, yeah, all of these players are susceptible to these occasional defensive lapses, and you just absolutely cannot have these against LAFC. But I did think that they did, except for that second goal, again, kind of largely contain them in transition. But again, it just takes one play and you can go from holding on to a tie and possibly being able to eke it out in penalties and secure kind of a surprise win to the 2-1 result that I imagine a lot of people expected.
Yeah, no, it's a good point you make because the complaint from Steve Shrundle, or at least his observation, was that LAFC is just not finishing their chances, and Austin is, right? He said that throughout the whole season, throughout the 2 wins in the regular season, and that last game where he feels like Austin have 3 goals that maybe on 4 shots or something like that.
Mhm.
Not many opportunities where he feels LAFC created a lot more opportunities. But if Bouanga and Son aren't finishing him, who is? And
Yeah.
has become the question for LAFC at this point because I think, if I'm not mistaken, they've scored 20 of 26 goals for LAFC since
Mhm.
they've arrived, and maybe 19 of 22 in a row or something like that. So it's the team is really dependent on them, and it's fine when they're performing well because they are that good. But if you are able to contain those two, it becomes more difficult to find a goal scorer. You might need an own goal or something like that.
Right, right. Yeah, kind of the same with Austin right now. I mean, again, like Bukari has been a facilitator. I think he is still battling injury right now. He has come off a recent injury and he does not seem 100%. But it's been Owen Wolf, who's really stepped up big this year. And then Berto Azuni, who, of course, the DP, record signing DP for Austin FC. The idea is, oh, he's going to share duties with Vasquez. Vasquez gets injured in that Open Cup game against San Jose. And so it's been largely contingent on Azuni in that number 9 role to score goals. And he has come on in the latter part of the season, but it took him a while to get going. And there's been some body language issues with him through the year. And I don't know if you maybe noticed that a little bit of that was manifesting in the game on Wednesday. So clearly getting him unfrustrated is a thing. And again, Diego Rubio has been a player that's been able to help facilitate a 9.5 role. He's still dealing with injury. We don't think he's going to be there. So I guess given all of this, like, what is the expectation for game two? I mean, again, you've got Austin with the home crowd. It hasn't necessarily been a fortress this year, but definitely that home crowd gives energy. If you have a match where it is left up to Stuver in goal, then that typically tends to work out well because Stuver has had a fantastic season, again, doing what he has consistently done over the last few years. I know that LA would love to close this out. Again, this coming a day after the World Series gets decided in a game 7. And that's a little bit of a tenuous situation for the Dodgers. And I just, again, if you get this down to a third and final game for LAFC, I mean, again, anything can happen in an MLS match. So I imagine they want to close it out tomorrow night. But do you think that they will do this?
I think they will. I think that, like you say, they definitely want to close it out. The interesting thing is then you have a large break between now and the semifinals, so there's almost an argument to be made. Well, it's better if they can win it in game three if you can
Right.
choose that. But no, I think it's interesting you mentioned Stuver because we were saying that at 1-1. in the press box, like, well, if this goes to penalties, which goalkeeper are you taking right now? Because
Mhm.
you have the name of Hugo Lloris, but Brad Stuver's been fantastic as well. So I could see that it going to penalties and being decided there. But yeah, I think it's so tough to be able to stop Son and Bouanga 2 games in a row, and they were
Mhm.
able to contain them pretty well, as we've discussed in game one. So I just feel like they're gonna, yeah, put a couple goals in the back of the net between the two of them in Austin. But yeah, it's a very raucous place. It's a great stadium, and hopefully it'll be up for it and packed out because yeah, as you mentioned, the Dodgers, it was during game five. It wasn't even a completely full stadium in game one. It was mostly full, but there were some empty seats there because of that.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think that there's, yeah, a little bit of an advantage there to be had for Austin FC as well. And I think that they had a lot of possession. I would like to see them have less possession, but you mentioned Azuni, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think his skill set is necessarily hold up play and playing
No.
off of him in that center circle, which I think is kind of what you want to do against LAFC. So
Mhm.
that's the issue for me, is that I don't think it's necessarily personnel lines up in the way that you want to play LAFC as well as ideally it would.
Yeah, I mean, I think though that we've seen in game one that Austin can definitely ugly it up. And again, I don't know if they're going to revert again to the five back, but they've had quite a bit of success with the five back system this year. And that's been a debate with Austin fans right now. Like, should they go four back or five back? And I think there's certainly some things to be said for it. And again, if you have three center backs there and you have those wing backs that can move up and down the field, then you have maybe a better chance of clogging up the middle and frustrating Son and Bouanga in that way. I mean, again, Son more than Bouanga, obviously, given what happened there in that game. I mean, I kind of feel like this is something where Austin will continue to ugly it up. And I do kind of feel that this is going to go to PKs. I don't know that necessarily that I would take Lloris over Stuver in a PK situation. And again, the home match in 2022, the first that Austin had, they took that to PKs and they won, and that was a pretty magical moment. And certainly, again, we've seen a little bit of PK action in this playoffs, most notably Seattle, Minnesota, where you had three players hit the woodwork, including the Roldan brothers. So that, and again, that was a game that Seattle probably should have taken, just kind of given where they were. I mean, it went 0-0. So I kind of feel, I kind of portend that there might be a similar thing happening. Because again, I
Mhm.
don't feel like, again, with Rubio out, with Bucari still seemingly not 100%, I don't feel like they're necessarily going to be able to create a lot of offensive chances, but if they do, it's going to be on counters. I think it's largely going to be Wolf dependent, and that is something that they've been able to do some this year. But I feel like they've got a formula now. I mean, I'm sure Trundle is gaming for it, but I don't know. I mean, to me, this feels like one that really should go 3 games because I feel like about half of
Yeah.
them probably should go to 3 games, and I kind of feel like Vancouver and San Diego are going to pretty much close out their series with relative ease.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point you make on the back five as well, I think, because I think the reason that Estevez is doing that is just so that he can match up one on one, because LAFC is also playing that back five now, so they can put Son and
Mhm.
Bouanga as a two in the front. And
Yeah.
so it takes away the tactics, right? It becomes just an individual game, and that's where you add the physicality in. It becomes, as you say, it just a little bit more chaos, and
Mhm.
you fight for it rather than it becomes a game of skill and a game of. But at the same time, you also allow Son and Bouanga to go one on one, or to not have to beat you tactically, but just to beat you with their skill, and you don't necessarily want that either. So there's
Right, right.
pros and cons to it, but yeah, I think that's definitely the way that Estevez wants to play it. So I expect the back five again in game two is just go man for man, be physical about it, and try and win your battles.
Yeah, because for somebody who dreads seeing Bouanga coming in on Austin's defense, like one of the things I dread most is there's outside in diagonal runs that Bouanga tends to make. And I think that back
Hmm.
five over back four is the best way to deal with that because certainly we have seen that burn Austin more than once.
Yeah, that's definitely his specialty. He loves to cut in off
Mhm.
that wing and yeah, run at defenders. It's not a fun sight when you have Denny Bouanga running at you for sure.
Right. So you think it's going two, but you wouldn't mind it going three. So let's assume again, since you are our guest and LAFC is still favored, let's assume that LAFC closes out the series. And again, I think that's what a lot of us expect. Certainly, I mean, I think Austin can win this series, but right now the odds and kind of just the vibes are maybe with LAFC. So I'm wondering how far you think they're going to go. I mean, again, if they win this, they are most likely getting Vancouver. Vancouver looks amazing this year, but LAFC also has a history of having Vancouver's number. It is a different coach, it is a different year, it is a different makeup, but it is still I imagine there are enough Vancouver players there that have been defeated by LAFC enough to know that, yeah, this is a hurdle that they have to overcome mentally. So just curious, do you think that they can get past Vancouver, assuming that it's that? And then, of course, Western Conference Finals, Seattle, Minnesota, San Diego, most likely right now. I don't think Portland factors in, but I feel like it's going to be Seattle. But again, I would feel that more strongly if they had pulled out game one. So just kind of curious, do you think they can get to an MLS Cup? And again, I know the Don Garber dream would be LAFC Miami. Don't know if that's what you're projecting, or but let's hear what you think.
I actually am projecting that. I think that,
Okay.
look, I actually think Vancouver is the biggest hurdle, though, for
Mhm.
LAFC left in this Western Conference because, like you say, it's interesting because LAFC has had their number for many, many years, but that's been under Vanni Sortini. That's been without Thomas Muller, right?
Right.
It's been a completely different team. And I think that, yeah, Vancouver will want to make a statement here and say, well, this isn't the same Vancouver. And I think they've proven that all year that this isn't the same Vancouver. And so I don't even factor that in. I believe that it's going to be a really tough game to go there and win in Vancouver in a Western Conference semifinal. I think LAFC can do it. I think they have the better team, but that's one where it's almost like a toss-up for me because it's such a good matchup where
Mhm.
they're so well built, and Sorensen's done such a great job there, in my opinion. That yeah, they're a tough team to break down. They have the defender of the year in Tristan Blackman. They have the home crowd will be probably very large at BC Place, I would assume. I don't know if they're going to open up the
Mhm.
top deck or not, but
Right.
they have it just seems like everything's going for him. You say the vibes are that LAFC would beat Austin. I feel like the vibes in Vancouver are equally as good. So
Mhm.
that's a tough one. I almost have more confidence that LAFC would be able to come and beat San Diego in San Diego with all the Chucky drama and all of that going on. But
Right. Right.
but yeah, they can do it for sure. But Vancouver certainly the biggest hurdle in my opinion. And as far as the final, I still see San Diego making it. But yeah, it's Seattle, man. They do it every year, so
Right.
you almost should expect them to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Got a bit unlucky again in that PK sequence and unlucky not to score in that game because, yeah, again, obviously
Exactly.
Minnesota, we've talked about the issues that they've had with injuries, but Yeboah is back. So that definitely helps overall in terms of just thinking about Minnesota and their ability to score goals. Yeah, it could end up being Minnesota weirdly. But yeah, going back to Vancouver for a second, two matches this season. Vancouver and LAFC drew 2-2 back in May in BC Place. And then the return leg in LA, Vancouver won that with a Sabi goal pretty early. That was a 1-0 contest. Anything that stood out to you from either of those matches? Anything that you remember? This was pre-Muller, pre-Sun, so everything has kind of changed now thanks to incredible spending in the summer transfer window and
Right.
incredible gets. It's weird. If you had predicted at the start of the season, oh yeah, Sun and Muller are going to come to West Coast teams because that is exactly what you would expect. You would not predict that, but here we are.
Right, no, exactly. And that's why I just wouldn't take too much from any of the games. It's why I didn't take too much from the LAFC Austin games, right? Because
Mhm.
Son wasn't there, even Bouanga wasn't there for the second game, it was on
Right,
international
right.
duty.
Yep.
I just feel, yeah, it's a different team when you have David Martinez leading the line versus when you have Denny Bouanga and Son leading the line.
Right.
And you can say the same thing for Vancouver. It's a little bit different when Thomas Muller there. And they've had their injury issues too with their star players. Brian Wright, Ryan Gauld have been in and out of the
Yep.
team. So
Yep.
yeah, dependent on who's on the pitch. But what I will say is that Vancouver have been able to deal with that, I think, even better than LAFC have, because if LAFC's without Son and Bouanga, they can eke out a victory. David Martinez can score a goal, Ordaz can score a goal here and there, but with if Vancouver doesn't have Ryan Gauld, they're fine. If they don't have Brian White, they're still going to be the Vancouver Whitecaps, and I think that just tells you how structured Jesper Sorensen has made them, how well drilled he has made them. Because yeah, they are not a team that's even built on stars as much as LAFC is. I don't think they're quite as dependent on the skill in that sense. It's two different teams than what we saw play earlier in the year, I think.
Okay, and so if it is LAFC Miami in the final,
Mm.
the game will be in Fort Lauderdale on the site of the former Lockhart Stadium, so which has now been retooled and things are a little different there than they used to be. Obviously, it
Yeah.
used to be a little bit more chill in terms of I believe like the team would walk from the practice facility over to the stadium and kind of high five fans and stuff like that. I don't think that's really happening anymore. But just kind of curious, would you make that trip? And what do you think would happen in a match where I mean, it's most likely that LAFC does get to the final that they will be playing away. I mean, we know definitively that Austin
Mhm.
would if they they somehow get to the final, there's no way they can host against any team the way that things work. But just kind of curious about that. Like going on the road, does that seem to be something that would be an issue for LAFC? And then obviously huge star power. I think they'd get a lot of eyeballs, but just kind of wondering how they'd fare right now. I mean, one thing that really struck me about Miami in that first game against Nashville is they had like nearly 90% passing accuracy, which I just did the East numbers. It was by far the best in the East. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
pretty. I don't think there's a West team that like beat that either. They're playing really well. They when you have Messi leading things, you tend to complete a lot of passes. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's an interesting one because if LAFC is able to close this out, that would have already been their last home game at BMO Stadium in game one, which would also
right?
be Steve Cherundolo's last home game at BMO Stadium because he's set to leave the
Mm,
club after the end of the season, head back to
right.
Germany with his family. It's I think there's some added motivation there, but Steve was asked about it after the game and he said, I love playing on the road as an ex-defender. I love to be able to quiet that crowd. I love to be able to shut down the opponent in their house. And yeah, I don't think that's too much of an issue, but I do think it'd be interesting to see if it's still at that Chase Stadium Lockhart site because in MLS Cup, you have Messi and Heung-min Son. To me, you got to move that to a much bigger stadium.
Right.
So I'm curious if MLS would do such a thing, or if there would be a stadium available with NFL and college football season and all that
Mm,
going on. So yeah, it would be an interesting situation if you're playing away at 20,000 versus away at 60,000, it's a little bit of a
yeah,
different scenario.
they might find a way.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so.
Yeah, I've not yet checked stadiums in the Miami area and what's going on that weekend. But again, I'm personally I'm holding out if it's not Austin, because obviously I would love to cover an Austin MLS Cup.
Transition.
Hey, so just jumping in here to say that I did indeed check, and Hard Rock Stadium is occupied December 6th. Not by football, as you might expect. There was not a Dolphins game that weekend, but there is a Spin 40th anniversary concert that's happening with special names. So that is not a possibility. It looks like if Miami does get to the final and it is there, it is going to be in Fort Lauderdale at Chase Stadium.
Transition.
But Vancouver Cincinnati to me seems like that would be a really fun final. Obviously, it's not going to
Mhm.
get the same number of eyeballs. That's one that's probably more for the hardcore fans. But when you get the chance to have Mueller versus Evander, that could be a lot of fun.
And in LA, our thought is the only way LAFC hosts is if we get another LA New York final. Seems
Right.
like the most likely possibility.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's still very much in play. Yeah. I
It
think that'd be a
is.
little
New
bit of a
York looks good
surprise for NYCFC to get through, but sure.
for sure, but the Red
Yeah.
Bulls did it. Who knows?
Right. Yeah.
Austin could do it. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So real quick, I wanted to ask one last thing to bring this to baseball,
Mhm.
but new question occurred to me. This is a little bit of a curveball from this was not on our list, but you had mentioned Cherundolo's last game. So wondering if you have any kind of ideas as to who's going to be the successor as head coach. This seems like a really good job for Jim Curtin. I think this would be fun for him. I think
Mhm.
this would be fun for LAFC. I think that'd be a good fit, but I don't know if that's necessarily in the cards. And I don't know if you've been hearing anything about possible candidates. It does look like Tata Martino is going to go to Atlanta to reunite there from their glory
Mhm.
days. I don't know if that can like jumpstart Miguel Almiron necessarily the way that it was back then. I don't know that you're going to get 2018 Miguel Almiron in 2026, but interesting to see that they are possibly diving back in there because I imagine that Martino might have been thought of as an LAFC candidate before this, but it's kind of curious as to where that might go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Martino was a candidate as well for LAFC. He would rather go to Atlanta himself, I think, which I think LAFC fans are completely fine with. I'm not sure that with all his past Mexican history with the Mexican national team that LAFC fans want him too badly
Sure.
in LA. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because they could go the route of a big name. They could try and go after like an Ange Postecoglou, which there are certainly LAFC fans who want that to happen. You could go for a big name like that, or you could go the same route that you did with Steve Cherundolo and promote Ante Razov, the assistant coach, to the head coaching position. Steve Cherundolo, of course, was the head coach at Las Vegas Lights, the USL
Right, right.
affiliate at the time, and he was always thought to be the successor to Bob Bradley. The idea at the time was that he had a similar play style. We've found out since that that's not the case, but Ante Razov is certainly a head coaching candidate for not just LAFC, but teams around the league are looking at him.
Mhm.
So it's not like it's just promoting from within to do so. He's ready for the job as well. So
Okay.
I think he's definitely in the mix, and it's more of a decision to me whether they want to go big name because a lot like when Steve came in, that was the reaction. A lot of LAFC fans were unhappy. They wanted a bigger name.
Mhm.
And they weren't ready. And of course, that changed when he did the double in his first year. So it'll be interesting to me. Do they try and bring that big name in, or do they say Ante Razov, or do they say somebody like Jim Curtin, who we know has the ability to win in MLS?
Yeah. Would you consider him a big name? I mean, it's not an Ange necessarily, speaking of like past Spurs affiliated people.
Yeah, I guess I put them in three different buckets. I put it in
Okay.
promote from within bucket. I put it in
Mhm.
MLS winners bucket. These are
Mhm.
good MLS coaches that we've seen in MLS before. And then big names I would put as a third bucket, people who are either international coaches or European coaches or maybe even big South American coaches, these type of people who haven't been in MLS before.
Yeah, because that's the thing. When Estevez got hired, right before that, Rodolfo Borrell, the sporting director here, he was talking about names you wouldn't believe are
I
interested
know.
in this job.
I know.
And then it was like, oh, no, this is very much a name that we could believe, actually. I mean, it's turned out well. I think that he's done a really good job. There's definitely been culture shift. He had a little bit of swagger a couple weeks ago. He was talking about just I'd asked him about just the journey he had being let go middle of the season with Dallas and then coming back and being in the playoffs. He talked about something like, I've been in the league 4 years. I've finished three of those. All three of those years, I made the playoffs. He does know how to win, and he's gotten them back. He's gotten them back to a place where, for the kind of talent gaps that maybe exist between some of the league's top teams and Austin, I think they have done pretty admirably well in this first year. That was an adjustment for fans, certainly, when he got hired. The expectations were, oh, it's going to be this huge name. And then it's no, it's somebody who got let go from our rivals last season, and neither of the teams made the playoffs. But it's worked out so far. It worked out really well. And again, there are some people that maybe think that, okay, Estevez is still transitional and there's going to be somebody else in the wings, but I think he's earned a lot of goodwill with the year that he's had.
Yeah, no, he's done better than I expected, and it's no criticism of him, but that was my reaction as well. When he was first
Right.
hired, I was shocked because of that quote from Rodolfo Borrell.
Mhm.
And we know that the connections that Borrell has throughout the footballing world in Europe and etc. So it was just so shocking to hear such a quote from him and then bring in, the former FC Dallas. It's just like, yeah, it
Mhm.
blew my mind as well. Um,
Right.
but as you say, he's done well. He's lived up over expectations, I think. So you can't criticize it at this point. But it was at the moment, it's just like, why would Burrell give such a quote if he knows that's not definitively who he's going to bring in? And
Right.
I don't think you'll see John Thorrington give any type of quote like that because he knows of
Right.
what his options are.
And that's the thing. LAFC has put themselves in a position, and that's been one thing that Burrell has really been working against. LAFC, obviously, they have such amazing treasure troves of GAM, and they do have the addition of being able to recruit people to LA, that they are able to bring people in maybe under market value, and they do have a lot of money to play with. And just Austin FC has never really had that luxury, given, even though they're only a slightly younger club, they've had some bad contracts initially, and then they haven't really been able to pivot and sell players that they got for a lot of money and get a lot of return. Brian Rodriguez or something like that. Like if a multi-million dollar player doesn't work out for LAFC, they can find a buyer and flip that and then try something else. Whereas Austin does not really have that luxury, which again, the big question here is Owen Wolf and his future. He is probably the player that could bring in a truckload of GAM, but also he's been an increasingly important player to Austin FC and what they do. And it would be a shame to lose him. I think that the team would be a lot worse off if he was gone, even if they were able to bring in some hotshot young number 10, which of course this team has never had. So we shall see in the offseason.
Yeah.
That's one of the big looming questions in the offseason. Any big looming offseason questions for y'all? Anything
I
you're wondering
think
about LAFC wise?
I think actually not too many because LAFC's been having a lot of recent contract extensions. Like they just extended Hollingshead or
Yeah.
Daz, a couple others. They're getting ahead of these contract expirations because those players were out of contract and so there was question marks, but they're getting ahead of these moves, I think, a little bit, which is nice to see. But there's still that DP spot open. So, that's the question. Where are they going to spend that DP? And it's probably, to me, it's like you bring in the new coach before you fill the DP slot, let him have
Sure.
some say in that. But who knows? Because they didn't do that with Sun, right? Obviously, Sun's a little no questions from any coaches probably. But yeah, it's interesting ones. And yeah, on Wolf, I would imagine that Austin fans are a little disappointed he wasn't a finalist for Young Player of the Year because he
Right.
was so fantastic this entire year. I
Mhm.
think he definitely could have been. And that assist, wow, just the awareness in game one. So yeah, that's definitely a big question for Austin, and I hope he sticks around because I love those type of young players in MLS. I think it's a good place for them to develop, especially when you're in a system like Owen Wolf is, where he gets to play as many minutes as he can, and a lot of it is structured around him. I think it's yeah better for players to develop than maybe immediately make that jump to Europe. So hopefully he sticks around.
Yeah, and still just 20. which is
Yeah,
incredible.
exactly.
So LAFC has been doing this with just two DPs.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I know. Imagine they add a third, but
I don't know, man.
it's what you were saying,
No problem.
right? Olivier Giroud was at the beginning of the season. He was the DP. He was the big
Yeah.
splash signing to sell the jerseys, and
Hmm.
it didn't work out. Immediately, LAFC was able to pivot, move him out, get
Right.
Son in, and all those things. They had Chingiz under for a little bit there, and the Rosen as well for a little bit there. So they just filled it for a second, but yeah, it's interesting because LAFC doesn't seem to be eager to fill those spots. They just wait for the opportunities to come to them. When Son was signed, I asked Thorrington, "Are you trying to fill the third one during this window before so that you could be ready for playoffs?" And he said, "If it comes, if not, we'll do it in the offseason, basically." And
Mm.
so I expect something coming in the offseason.
All right. So one last question. So obviously game 7 happening tonight for the World Series. I'm just wondering, LAFC, it's a weird playoff system that MLS has. It doesn't really get going until after this round in terms of just thinking about you've got the single elimination games and you've got things really ramping up. I'm just curious as to what the mood has been around LAFC, and is there a lot of crossover? Have people been consumed with the Dodgers in the World Series, or is it something where it's pretty independent, or is it just like the Rams and Chargers now that it's NFL season that are dominating the town?
No, it's definitely the Dodgers. There is some crossover there. A lot of LAFC fans are Dodger fans and vice versa. But
Mhm.
like I said, Game 5 was the same night as Game 1, so it wasn't a packed house. It was also a Wednesday night, so who knows which was the main cause. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of people are focused on the Dodgers, and people will shift further into LAFC once Game 7 is over and we get full ramped into the semifinals, finals of the conference and things like that. So I think there's a little bit, but it's not like there's still a good energy around LAFC. It hasn't dampened the mood too much.
Okay. And just how are things over in Galaxy Land? I mean, again, I don't know how much of an eye you keep on
My
that, but it's
goodness.
been a weird season for them.
It's been a weird season and it's so much revolving around Ricky Puig, and he was supposed to speak at the media availability year-end interviews and he just didn't show up.
Wow.
So
Okay.
who knows what's going on over there. But yeah, I think if he's back, they're back to at least a competitive team.
Sure.
But there's certainly going to be some moves made over there. I think this offseason, Will Kuntz did a fantastic job when he first came in, and I don't think he's going to just say, "Well, Ricky back, problem solved." I think he's going to attack this offseason.
Yeah, Diego Fagundes was their player of the year, which was interesting coming from
And I believe he had his
watching his
contract
journey.
option declined.
Right.
Um, so they're still in negotiations though to bring him back, I believe. So he may
Right.
return, but yeah, you sum it up very well.
Well, he was on an enormous number, which was big reason why
That too.
he's no longer with
Yeah.
Austin. It wasn't for lack of vibes, but it was certainly when you're getting 7 figures and your production is not commensurate with 7 figures, then that's a problem in MLS, as we know.
Right. No, the vibes are definitely there. Last year when they won MLS Cup, he was all the vibes. Let's say
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Pushing around Ricky Puig in a drinks cooler after the game.
Yeah, definitely,
It was
definitely
a good
harder to
time.
have vibes when you're vying for a wooden spoon, which they avoided though. So thank you,
They
DC
did.
United.
They did. Congratulations to them.
All right. Anything else you want to chime in with? If it is Austin beating LAFC in this, I'm just wondering, do your allegiances shift? Do you become a Vancouver fan? What happens to you if the journey ends here with the series?
Hey, I'm a neutral. I'm good with whatever happens.
Okay.
I'm just enjoying the playoffs, man. But as you say, anything could happen. Look, Miami went up 1-0 against Atlanta United last year.
Hmm.
Then what
Yep.
happened? So
Yep. Yep.
anything can happen in these MLS Cup playoffs. Don't put anything past anybody.
Yeah, we do have a goalkeeper named Brad as well. That's
Guy's
that's
pretty
something.
good. That guy's pretty good.
Is yeah.
Yeah.
Who's
If
the
it
better
wasn't for
Brad,
Dane St.
Stuver
Clair,
or
he would have been.
Guzan? That's
Oh, oh, I'll take Stuver right now.
okay. Yeah. I mean, Guzan obviously, just retired, big lifetime achievements. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting debate actually. Yeah.
It's
All
a good
right.
one.
So
It's a good one.
well, thanks so much. I appreciate having you on. You're not making it out, obviously, to Austin tomorrow, I don't think, right? No.
No, no.
That's a shame. Yeah, that would be great to see in the press box, but maybe sometime you can get here.
I definitely need to make it out to Austin for sure for a game. I hear only amazing things. It's right at the top of my list
Yeah,
for
yeah, you
sure.
should definitely try to get yourself out here next year. All right.
I will. I
Well,
will.
good. Thanks so much. Appreciate having you on. And yes, we will be back next week with assessment of either how the season went or we're going to preview game 3.
This is the best thing I've heard in the history of the 8 years I've been on this planet.